is Julianna. If we haven't had a chance to meet yet, I am part of the pastoral team here at the Journey Church. And this summer, we're diving into a new teaching series. We're finally done the book of Mark. We had a great time there. But we're diving into a new series called God Speaks. And over the next 2 months, there will be a variety of speakers coming to share how God has been speaking to them, because we know God is always speaking to us. So I have the pleasure of launching this teaching series with a sermon I've titled The Better Part. And so let's start today by reading the passage, which comes from Luke 10:38 to 42. We read, "Now as they went on their way, he, Jesus, entered a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him. She had a sister named Mary who sat at Jesus' feet and listened to what he was saying. But Martha was distracted by her many tasks. So she came to him and asked, 'Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her then to help me.' But the Lord answered her, 'Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things. But few things are needed, indeed only one. Mary has chosen the better part, which will not be taken away from her.'" Now, I think many of us have heard of the birth order stereotypes. Yeah? Where older siblings or oldest specifically, tend to be characterized as the more responsible one, the more reliable one, maybe the more safety conscious and rule-focused one, the planner, the organizer. They also tend to carry the weight of others' expectations more. And since their parents were still figuring out the whole parenting thing, they were really the trial child in several ways. They had slightly different, stricter expectations and rules placed on them. Now, younger siblings tend to be more free, more fun and spontaneous. And since parents have a better sense of which battles are worth fighting and which hills are worth dying on, younger siblings also tend to have a little bit less structure and expectations placed on them. Now, all of this can sometimes lead to older siblings becoming frustrated and trying to help make sure the younger sibling is getting the same experience and following the same expectation that were placed on them. Because obviously their parents have forgotten what the household expectations are. Now, I'll let you guess where I fall in that if you don't already know. But I will tell you that in my case, I was known as the milk police. I was very fixated on how much milk we were allowed to drink at snack and meal times. And I am being so very serious right now. So I see some similarities here with Mary and Martha. I think Martha was the oldest. And so the more I read today's passage and the more I sat with it, first of all, I realized just how short it is. We really don't know a lot about Martha or Mary, at least not from Luke. And this is the only place they show up in Luke's gospel. We learn a little bit more about them in John, but this is the only place Luke talks about them. And so when we read about this event in their lives, we are presented with two really one-dimensional women who appear to be at odds with and in opposition with each other. We praise Mary. We want to model Mary. We say Mary has it right, while we criticize Martha and question Martha and want to create distance from Martha. We want to be the Mary and not the Martha, and we turn these two women into archetypes that are in total opposition with each other. Yes, let's celebrate Mary, who was able to recognize who Jesus was and is ready and able to sit at his feet and listen, to sit at his feet and learn, to just sit with Jesus. But why are we so quick to criticize Martha so harshly? And what about those who see glimpses of themselves in Martha? See, I've always known that I was more like Martha than Mary. But the more I read the story, the more I sat with it, the more connected I felt to Martha. And then the more conflicted I felt with how Jesus responded. And truthfully, the more hurt I felt about how we usually talk about her. Because we can talk about Martha like she's a problem to solve, like she's a villain in the story, like she needs to change everything about who she is. So today, I want to walk with Martha through this story. Because from the beginning, it's really Martha's actions that set this whole story into motion. It's Martha who welcomes Jesus into her home. The impression I get here is that this was probably one of their earlier meetings. It certainly seems like this is the first time Jesus was in her home based on the coming interaction. So Martha was quick to have faith. She recognized who Jesus was and was ready to open her doors to him. And I could just picture Martha waiting by the city gates, having heard that Jesus was on his way, and she wanted to be the first to greet him to make sure that he would come to her home that day. And then we move to a scene in Martha's home, where it seems like everyone has settled in. And there's a bit of a time jump there. We don't know what happened in between Martha inviting Jesus into her home and Jesus sitting and teaching. We don't know what kind of interactions they've already had. We don't know who else is in the home. We don't know what Jesus is teaching about. There's a lot in this story that we just don't know. And then we're introduced to her sister, Mary, who's sitting at Jesus' feet and listening. Now, if Martha is the older sister, then I see Mary as the younger sister who loves to be around people and who people love to be around, who loves people in big ways, but maybe doesn't always realize all the ramifications of her actions. She is fully in the moment and isn't thinking about what has already happened or what needs to happen next. And she doesn't seem to be too concerned about what other people think about her. And I just picture her sitting there at Jesus' feet, just totally zoned in to what Jesus is saying, hanging on to every single word. We get this calm and quiet picture of Mary. And then our attention is drawn back to Martha. And we learn that Martha is now distracted by her many tasks or her serving. And here it is so easy to assume that Martha just doesn't realize the importance of what Jesus is teaching, or that she doesn't care about what Jesus is teaching, or that she doesn't recognize who Jesus is. But if she recognizes Jesus, who Jesus is, enough to invite him into her home, then why doesn't she sit with him like Mary does? Why does she focus on her tasks? The picture we often have of Martha is of her scurrying around the house, or more accurately, the kitchen. But I can also picture her sitting with the crowd that's listening to Jesus, but is internally distracted with the to-do list in her head that just won't stop. She just keeps going over and over and over all the things she needs to get done that way, and is aware of how much time is passing as she sits and listens and wonders how on earth she'll ever get it all done in time. And she has guests, so she knows she should be doing these things. She knows how important it is, and she's just sitting there, and time keeps sitting away and nothing is getting done. And suddenly she realizes she hasn't heard a word Jesus has said all day. How often do we try to sit with Jesus? Do we try to pray or read our Bible, but are distracted by all the things internally? But are distracted by the tasks we have, by the thing we can't forget to do, or about the conversation that's coming up later in that day? On the other hand, if she was running around the house, she was just following social expectations of the time. She invited someone into her home, and now she's going to serve them. But this isn't just anyone. This is Jesus. She wants to make sure she makes a good impression for this guest. She doesn't want to drop the ball here. She doesn't want to let him down. And Mary, sitting there, seems to have forgotten this. She's totally distracted by Jesus, and it's probably frustrating and embarrassing Martha a little bit, because Mary is not doing what she's supposed to be doing. Mary is not doing what she has been taught to do. Mary is probably also not doing what she has been asked to do. And Martha's frustration with Mary clearly hits a boiling point, because she goes to Jesus and questions why he hasn't said anything and assumes that he is going to be on her side. Tell her then to help me. And I can just hear the frustration and stress in Martha's voice. And I know I have often spoken this way. We need to start now. We're behind schedule. We're going to be late. We don't have enough time to do that. That's not going to work because... And when Martha speaks this way, I imagine that the entire mood and feeling of the room shifts. Because now, instead of listening to Jesus teach, everyone is very aware of how stressed and worried Martha is. And this seems really sudden for Martha. So I wonder how long it took her before she said something. I wonder if at any point Martha tried to get Mary's attention subtly, but Mary was just too oblivious because she was focused on Jesus. I wonder if Martha said something quietly to Mary first, or did she go straight to Jesus? And what was the breaking point for Martha to say something so blunt to Jesus? And I can hear the annoyance and frustration in her voice as her sibling probably once again isn't doing as much work as she isn't following the expectations on her. And how is she getting away with it again? Martha is stressed and anxious and worried and annoyed. And now those feelings have boiled over and are affecting everyone who is in her home. And I love how Jesus starts his response here. Because in this moment, he is calm. He is a steady presence. And he takes a moment to calm Martha down without ever actually telling her to calm down. It's Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted over many things. And in that moment, he tells her that he sees her. He sees that she is worried. He sees that she is overwhelmed. He sees that she is distracted. He sees her. And that doesn't make all of her worries go away. But she now knows that Jesus sees her, that Jesus understands what she is experiencing, and now she is able to listen to what Jesus is going to say next. And Jesus tells her, actually, these things that you have been told are so important, these things that you have been taught to focus on, these things that others have modeled worrying over, these things aren't nearly that important. There is only one important thing. So actually, Martha, you can let go of having to worry about all these other things and trying to make them perfect, because that's not what really matters. And actually, Mary sitting here, that's the better thing. And I'm not going to tell her to stop. And that's it. That's the end of the story. We don't know what happens next. In the next verse in Luke, we read that Jesus is praying somewhere. And there's clearly been a jump in time. Whether that's minutes, hours, days, we don't know. But we're pretty confident he's no longer with Martha and Mary. So we don't know how his time with them ended. We don't know how Martha responded. We don't know how Mary felt about being called out. We don't know what Jesus did next. We just don't know. But obviously something happened next. What was it? Does Jesus go without a meal that day because no one was preparing it, no one was serving? Does he have Martha sit for a little bit and then release her back to her tasks? Does she sit for a little bit and then Jesus releases Martha and Mary to those tasks? Does Jesus ask Martha to sit at all? Or does he just want her to stop worrying and seeing her work as the most important thing? A lot of times we assume that Martha abandoned all of her work and just sat next to Jesus. And that's the takeaway, that Martha became like Mary, and therefore we must also become like Mary. And again, we put these two women in opposition. But when I read this story, I actually see two women who are more alike than different. I see two women who both love Jesus, two women who want to be in Jesus' presence, and two women who want to take full advantage of being in his presence. And while they are in Jesus' presence, they both want to reflect themselves well. And one does this by doing what she has always been told to do, by doing her work, by serving. And the other ignores all of that and just sits at Jesus' feet. Did you notice that Jesus didn't say anything until Martha tried to get Mary to come help her? If what Martha was doing was really so bad and in need of so much correction, why did he wait until she said something? Jesus seems to let Martha serve until it becomes so overwhelming and distracting that she wants her sister to also stop learning from Jesus to help her. And that's when Jesus steps in and takes off the burden that Martha has placed on herself. Jesus seems to allow both of these women to express their faith and their love differently until Martha becomes weighed down by social pressure telling her what is most important. Jesus tells Martha that what she has become so fixated on, what the world has told her to worry about, these are not important things. That fulfilling her family's, her friends, or the world's expectation of her and her role, that is not needed. Only one thing is needed, and Mary, sitting here listening to Jesus, has discovered it. Jesus tells us that the things that we become fixated on, what the world has told us to worry about, these are not important. Fulfilling your family, your friends, the world's expectations of you and your role, that is not what is most important. And Mary, sitting there, listening to Jesus, had discovered it. Martha invited Jesus into her home. But once he came, she allowed the things she thought were most important to pull her away from sitting with Jesus. And for so many of us here, I think we struggle with the same thing. We have faith in Jesus. We may have prayed that prayer, inviting Jesus into our hearts. We come to church on Sunday. Maybe we go to a small group in the middle of the week. But that's it. During all the other times of the week, we allow the tasks that have become the tasks we have to do to become the most important thing. And we don't make time to sit with Jesus. We don't make time to learn from Jesus, to truly become disciples of Jesus. We may serve Jesus just like Martha was trying to do, but we don't allow ourselves to be discipled. And when we try to serve Jesus without first sitting with him, listening to him, learning from him, well, then we often become fixated on the wrong things. We become stressed. We become overwhelmed. We criticize others. We question why they aren't doing enough. We may even say things like Martha. I've had seasons in my life where I take on too much, to the point where I have to schedule every little thing down to the minute to make sure I can get everything done. And during those times, nowhere in my schedule did I put space to sit with Jesus. In those times, I didn't have any time of prayer or devotion or scripture reading, nothing. I wasn't taking days off, and I certainly didn't have a Sabbath. During that time, school became the most important thing. My job became the most important thing. Getting good grades became the most important thing. Performing well in the ministries I was leading became the most important thing. My reputation as someone who was a reliable, hard worker became the most important thing. I was trying to perform and live up to everyone else's expectations, and I was overwhelmed. Because none of those things were intended to be the most important thing. There was only one thing that was, and that was the one thing that I had cut out. And during those times, I wasn't very patient, or kind, or gentle, or loving. And I would question why others weren't as committed to being involved in the church as I was. Because serving God was clearly the most important thing. Serving the church was clearly the best thing you could do with your time, so why weren't they? And there are times where this is true for all of us. We get worried and distracted by our next paper, our next deadline, our next presentation, our next meeting. And we forget what the most important thing is. And in these moments, Jesus sees us. He sees us in our worry, in our stress, in our anxiety, in our overwhelmedness. He sees as we let the pressure that others put on us build until we hit our breaking point. He sees us as we try to always do the right thing, but so often miss what that right thing is. He sees us. He sees you. And he wants to release you from that worry and distraction. In Matthew 11, Jesus says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Eugene Peterson has an interpretation of this in the Message, and he puts Jesus' words this way: "Are you tired? Worn out? Burnt out on religion? Come to me. Get away with me and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. You can be freed from all these other demands that people want to put on you, because those aren't needed. The most important thing you can do with your time is sit with Jesus. Listen to Jesus. Learn from Jesus. Sit with Jesus and you will learn to live freely. You'll have rest. You can learn rhythms of grace. It's not that what Martha was doing was bad. It's not that what Martha was doing was wrong. It was that she allowed other people's expectations to distract her, worry her, and overwhelm her. Because eventually, Jesus would stop teaching that day. Eventually, people would need to be fed. Eventually, Martha and Mary would need to get up and start serving. And I think that Martha, once she understood these new expectations, once she understood that sitting with Jesus was the most important thing, once she understood who Jesus was and what his mission was a great disciple and follower of Jesus. One who used her gifts and abilities of service and her desire to get things done, to share the gospel and care for those within the community. Because Martha would have unique gifts and abilities that Mary didn't. In fact, those very same gifts that got her in trouble here, God has given her to use to serve others well. In fact, we read in John 12 that Jesus is back in the home of Martha and Mary. And in that narrative, we often focus on how Mary was taking the expensive perfume and anointing Jesus. And we read that their brother Lazarus was reclining with Jesus. But do you know what Mary was doing? She was serving. It is very likely that she was doing very similar work to what she had been doing or trying to do on this day. But not because she felt obligated to, or because people expected her to, but because she now understood what was most important. I imagine she spent time listening to Jesus, and she went about her tasks with a different attitude, knowing that they didn't need to be perfect, that she could listen and try to do her work at the same time. And that on this day, just being with Jesus, listening to Jesus, creating space for other people to gather with Jesus, that was the most important thing. And that would have been liberating to her and filled her with joy and peace as she went about her familiar tasks with a new purpose. Because she allowed herself to be discipled first. Few things are needed, indeed only one. As we enter the summer, I want to challenge you, over your vacations, during your times away, to make space to just sit with Jesus. Be intentional about listening for his voice. Take time to quiet the noise around you and inside of you. I know for me, simple breath prayers like "Speak, for your servant is listening," or "Be still and know that I am God," help me to quiet that internal noise and bring me back to focus when I inevitably do get distracted. As you look ahead into the fall, which I know no one wants to think about right now, but what sort of rhythms is God calling you into? What rhythms is God asking you to let go of? Taking time over the summer to consider these things means you can enter the fall season with intention instead of just doing what you've always done in the past. Do you have space in your daily life to just sit with God, to sit at Jesus' feet? Is there something in your life right now that is keeping you worried and distracted and unable to do that? What would it look like to surrender that to God? What would it look like to let go of the things that cause us to be worried? Is there a commitment you need to step back from or say no to? Is there a hobby or a way you spend your free time that you need to cut back on or cut out altogether? How you spend your time is a reflection of what you think is most important. What does your schedule, your routine, indicate is most important to you? Is it work? Social media? Video games? Extracurriculars? Grades? Volunteer activities? Ministries you serve in? Your friends? Or your family? None of these things are what is most important. Don't let the things you do, even the things you do for God, keep you from spending time with God. So as the worship team leads us in our closing song, I encourage you to really reflect on the lyrics. It's not a new song, but I think it's new to our congregation. We haven't done it here before. And if you can, I'd encourage you to say these lyrics as a prayer. But if you can't, then please don't. But ask God to show you what's holding you back from being able to honestly pray these words. Is there something you need to surrender to Him before you can? Are you tired? Worn out? Burnt out on religion? Come to Jesus. Get away with Jesus and you'll recover your life. Jesus will show you how to take a real rest. Walk with Jesus and work with Jesus. Watch how He does it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. Jesus won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Learn to keep company with Jesus, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. Few things are needed. Indeed, only one.